So, Eric, thank you thank you very much for talking with me, and congratulations on your new job.
Thanks.
Yeah. And so what is the most important change that you think you'll have to make in your first year at Yale?
Well, I think that it would be foolish to go into this saying that I know all the answers or that I even know the big change that has to be made. I have a sense of what's good, and I have a sense of where there are more challenges. I'm going to spend the first couple of months, more than a couple of months. I'm going to spend the next couple of months before I arrive there doing a lot of listening. And then I'm going to spend the first couple of months when I am there listening. There's great science. Nobody has ever questioned the quality of the laboratory science at Yale. There's great clinical care. There are some people who have a very substantial national reputation in terms of their clinical research, but we probably need to grow that group of people. And we need to build that many more bridges between the laboratory and the clinic. And then I guess the one other thing is that Yale is actually very well positioned because it has 15 care centers that are scattered across Connecticut. And at the moment, Yale takes care of about 45% of the oncology population in Connecticut. But one of the key aspects that's so critical is that those care centers and the main campus be totally integrated. And so we're going to spend a fair amount of time focusing on that integration effort.
When's your first day again?
I'm going to start February 1, so basically 3 months. And I'm going to disappear and go on vacation for at least 2 weeks in late January. So I've got 2.5 months now.
Oh, fabulous. Yeah.
I can work in advance. So, in my mind, this is a real opportunity to both have a big impact on cancer care in Connecticut and beyond Connecticut, and to really enhance the research that's already being done there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not speaking of beyond Connecticut. Yale has the challenge of being between two expanding centers of excellence, really centers of the universe, MSK and Dana-Farber. This is not new. I'm not discovering this. What do you see as your opportunity and competitive advantage? And I'm not just talking about keeping patients close to where they live. So it's not just geography, it's about why.
So I actually don't think that the existence of Dana-Farber and Memorial is a problem. Each of them is more than 100 miles away. There's sadly a lot of cancer in the world, and there's absolutely no way that Memorial can take care of all the patients in a 3-state area, and there's no way that Dana-Farber can take care of everybody in Massachusetts and Connecticut and what have you. So from a patient standpoint, there are plenty of patients to be distributed across those 3 centers. So that doesn't seem to be concerning. And from a research standpoint, we have many more than 2 large cancer centers in the United States. In fact, in New York City alone, there are many. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that there's any reason to think that it's a problem in terms of competition from a research in terms of the research. And again, clinically, there are plenty of patients.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What is the catchment area and how many new patients?
So the catchment area is defined as all of Connecticut.
Okay.
For the purposes of the Cancer Center core grant. And I would have to check. I mean, I carry around in my head this 45% of all new diagnoses of cancer in the state of Connecticut. And that's between the care centers and the main campus.
What areas of research or clinical care do you expect to expand?
So I think that as part of this listening tour, I'm going to do my best to figure out the areas that are prime for expansion, where in fact there's, so for example, in the area of lung cancer, thoracic oncology, they have a great program already. I need to support that program and make sure that it stays strong, but I don't know that we need to do anything revolutionary there, because again, they have a SPORE, they have many good clinicians. They're really in quite good shape. There are other areas like common cancers, GI and breast, where they have a lot of strength, but where they may need to be even stronger. And I'm not going to make any absolute pronouncement at this time about what we're going to do, but we're going to first figure out 2 or 3 of the most promising areas to work on in the first year or 2, and then focus on the others. And from a research perspective, you can't tell scientists what to work on. They really need to work on what interests them, and you can't limit them. There are many, many good scientists. We're in the process of recruiting that many more. So there's a whole effort around molecular and cellular oncology. There's a whole effort in the Yale Cancer Biology Institute to recruit additional people. And so I don't know that there's any one specific scientific area. Immuno-oncology is clearly growing, but it's growing everywhere. So I don't think that that's unique necessarily. The one thing I'll add, though, is that having these 15 care centers across Connecticut gives us the possibility of doing something a little different from a health services research standpoint, and allows us to ask some questions about healthcare delivery, and specifically oncology care delivery, that some other places that are a little bit more siloed may not be able to do. And so I don't personally think that cancer care in 2030 is going to look like cancer care in 2020. And I'm not just talking about new drugs. I'm talking about where people get care and how they get care, and how we use telemedicine and everything else that falls within that general basket. And I think we've got a real opportunity, given the fact that we have these care centers that interact, like a, hub and spoke model, with the hub. I think we have a real opportunity to ask how we can better care for people with cancer by getting more and more of their care closer to their home, or maybe even in their home.
What about the underserved? What about outreach and engagement? That must be very much better, easier to do with 15 care hubs.
Well, it's one hopes, and it's something we have to pay attention to. Connecticut is a funny state because, there is not a single dominant city in Connecticut. There are multiple mid-sized cities, many of which have a pretty large segment of underrepresented minorities and people who are without resources. And so, we have to be prepared to go into each of those places and make sure that the care that's delivered is care that's really accessible to everybody.
And then finances, of course, of clinical care have been challenged by the pandemic all across the US, all over the world. How has this impacted your clinical operations and your research operations at Yale? And what do you see ahead for the next year or 2?
Yeah, so I just took this. I'm not even in the job yet, so I can't give you great answers to all of these questions. And Paul, one of the things that I figured out is that in spite of having one group interview, 50 literally Zoom interviews, 2 days there, and then talking to a bunch of these people over and over again, there are still huge gaps in my knowledge. Because the job is both cancer center director and physician in chief of the oncology hospital. And so I have to learn a huge amount. What I do know is that, and this is true at a lot of places, is there's been a lot of sort of, not that we're quite post-COVID, but we're sort of emerging from COVID, and there's a lot of recovery going on. And yeah, COVID was a huge hit everywhere, but it's not going to stay forever. And I think that if we're smart, we're going to take some of the lessons we learned in terms of delivering care during COVID and apply them post-COVID. I hope we do that both with clinical research and with clinical care.
Well, that makes all kinds of sense. If anything, it was a test of what's essential. And
yeah, I mean, so this is going to be a very different job for me, but what I've been incredibly impressed by is how easy it is to communicate and work with my colleagues at Yale. It doesn't hurt that I've known many of them for years, and that there are other people in the institution who I know because I was there a long, long time ago. And I have to say, I'm really looking forward to it. I don't like Pepe's Pizza. But I'm sure I'll find other pizza that I do like.
I'm sure you will. So what's the scientific theme that you're thinking of? Is there one, or is it too early to talk about?
I think it's really too early. I want to be able to support all the scientists, who are engaged in productive work. And, there are plans to recruit additional scientists. But I can't tell you that at this moment in time that our plan is to build up DNA damage repair or immuno-oncology or any particular area. We're not going to suddenly build a big proteomics facility. I think that it's really, I think it's going to be very important, and this hasn't been done for a while, to do a strategic plan. And we're going to tackle that in the first several months. And this is just, I think it's just good practice, or a good practice to get everybody together, all the people who are involved in research and in clinical care, and to figure out the most important directions. I think as a leader, you absolutely have to have vision and you have to know how to steer the ship, but you also have to assess the culture of the ship. And if you come in and have all of these ideas and expectations, and you're going to suddenly apply them in a new place where you don't know everyone, I think it's a recipe for failure. So I've thought a lot about how to approach, taking on the leadership of a new program. And I can tell you that I'm not going to come in with any great pronouncement and any slash and burn approach.
Yeah,
not that I think I would ever do that.
It's not a smart thing to do. It's been tried at academic cancer centers and it did not work.
It was somewhat recently at one very large center.
Yes, I was thinking of just exactly that. If you lose the faculty, you've lost the war. Well, this is a huge job. And then, of course, in your spare time, in a few months, you'll become ASCO president. How will you do all of this?
I have a lot of energy, and that helps. I fortunately like what I do. I get a lot of joy from it, and hard work is something I've never been afraid of. ASCO has really changed the way that leadership is approached over the past few years, and the president-elect, president, chairman of the board, and past president all work together as a block, and it's really taken away quite as much of the time commitment in that 1 year as president, and has spread it out over 4 years. And I think that that makes it much more compatible with taking on a new job. So yes, I am going to be ASCO president starting in June, but I don't think that being ASCO president is going to be so very different from being president-elect, or so very different than being chairman of the board. It's going to be a little more work, no question. But I think it's going to be possible. And the other way that I'm going to deal with it is I'm giving up everything else. Anything else that I do that isn't about ASCO and isn't about Yale is going away.
What about bicycling?
I'm still going to bicycle.
Okay, well, thank God. So are you, since we're on the subject, are you the first NCI designated cancer center director who speaks Russian?
Не знаю.
Не знаю, я тоже не знаю. Maybe even the first ever.
Yeah, but my Russian isn't very good anymore.
Oh, and speaking of which, it's a homecoming for you going back to Yale.
So, I mean, so to this day, I have a very clear recollection of when I got my my letter from Yale admitting me to college. And I was extraordinarily happy because it's where I wanted to go. And I can still remember that moment. And I have lots of Yale memories. Obviously, I mean, I was there a long time. I got married there. I had 2 children there. It's a pretty special place. I've been gone for over 30 years. I never thought we would move back. My wife never was particularly interested in moving back, although she's come around to the idea. But there's something that's, you know, I will admit that the fact that there's a real emotional draw, and it's going to make it very sweet for me.
Is there anything we forgot to address? Anything?
No, you know, so Paul, I think the biggest thing is, I think that there is, I don't think that, I think Yale's been a very strong cancer center. I think that there are relatively few people who would say that it's one of the very top cancer centers in the United States. It's, you know, among a group that's very good. And I believe, and I think my colleagues believe, that Yale can be, over the course of the next 5 years, a truly premier cancer center nationally and internationally. And it's going to take some hard work and a lot of investment and a lot of organization, but there's a real commitment to do that in a way that I don't think that Yale has ever been committed to that in the past. I don't, you know, when I was there many years ago, I don't think there was a commitment to building the strongest of all cancer centers. And I don't think there was 20 years ago or 15 years ago or even 10 years ago. I think the leadership of the institution now are totally committed to this. And I think we're going to be able to do it. I mean, I'm really, one other thing that I think is worth mentioning is that Yale has a new dean of the medical school, Nancy Brown, who came from Vanderbilt, who is really a visionary leader and also has the added attribute of not seeming to care about how anything she does affects her personally. There's no ego involved. It's all about what she can do for everybody else. And I think that that really is going to allow us to be that much more successful.
Are you being given enough independence and enough of a dowry to do this?
I'm being given everything that I need to be successful, including the fact that I think whenever you take a job like this, one of the critical things is you have to be able to trust that the people you're working for have your back at all times and are going to be there to provide more resources when you can make a good argument for it. And I really believe that that's the case. You know, an offer letter is only so good. It's everything that's behind it that's so important. Feel like this is an unbelievable opportunity for me, and I'm just really looking forward to it.
Well, that's really fantastic. Thank you so much for talking with me.